Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Session 2 is what we'd like to begin at this moment. Session 1 talked about companies that have already committed to net zero, companies and local governments. In this session, we would like to ask companies that joined the JCI in the past year, they're yet to be the fresh members of JCI, to what they intend to do and to what extent they have made progress. We would like to have a naked explanation of the present status. Could we have the PowerPoints? First of all, SBT is the initiative, and SBT shows that companies have a target that is commensurate with the Paris Agreement. This SBT initiative is an international initiative, and the CDP, which I belong to, and WWF, and other international NGOs have created this. So whether the company targets are sufficient in terms of the Paris Agreement, it is screened from this standpoint. So you either pass or you don't. SBT. What is SBT? There's scope 1 and 2, and then there's a scope 3. I will be explaining that scope 1 and 2 is where directly emissions take place, GHGs, and scope 3 is use of electricity. That happens at power plants, not only electricity, but scope 3 is other than this, the whole of the value chain. So SBT covers scope 3 as well, and it's essential that this is covered. And specifically as to what the categories are under scope 3: supplier emissions, raw materials, and at the level of use of products. The people who are here, if they use automobiles, that will be scope 3 for automotive companies, and the emissions of investees would also be included. Today we'll be hearing from JPI, Japan Post Insurance, as an investor, so we'd like to hear more about this. And so by way of self-introduction, the new fresh members of the JCI, we'd like to have them talk about approaches to decarbonization. First of all, SBT 1.5 degrees certified Shionogi, Miss Masako Kudou, we'd like to hear from her first. So Miss Kudou, please.
Thank you. Can you show the slide, please? Next, please. Shionogi's policy is to provide the best healthcare solutions that are necessary to always protect people's health. So for the development of health, for more than 140 years, we've been contributing to the development of healthcare. It might sound a bit unfamiliar, but pharmaceutical industry and climate change, just as an example, let me focus on one of the focal areas, therapeutic fields, infectious diseases. With temperature increase, changes of precipitation and its patterns, impact on several infectious diseases have been suggested. Typically, they are malaria and dengue fever owing to the expansion of distribution areas of vectors such as mosquitoes. And several others have also been reported, germ in tropical, subtropical, seasonal diseases are also affected by global warming, according to reports. Now, COVID-19, even in the post-COVID era, these are considered as risks. As a leading company, tackling infectious diseases, Shionogi is preparing for the next possible pandemic in our R&D. Next page, please. We've been working on the solutions for COVID-19 currently raging, and we are aiming for total action, total care, not just with pharmaceutical products. Just one example. Shionogi have started offering a service that entails regularly monitoring COVID-19 virus concentration in the sewage to survey the infection status in the target area. Regarding this service, this technology can be applied to other infectious diseases for occurrence and expansion of the next pandemic. By detecting and predicting that we can make contribution to the countermeasures against infectious diseases. Next, we understand the warming affects the diseases that is essential to reduce GHG emissions in the first place. In June 2021, we obtained SBT certification and aim at carbon neutrality by 2050. Regarding emissions of Shionogi, the percentage of scope 3, particularly category 1 related to raw materials procurement, it's indeed significant. So in order to achieve SBT, it's difficult for us alone to achieve the target. We are hoping to achieve the goal together by eliciting cooperation from suppliers. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. What motivated you to join JCI?
For one, as I said, climate change. By Shionogi alone, there are so many issues to overcome. Those issues and those troubles, in order to do them, we need a group of people who can work with us. That's one. And there's another. These activities and this communication towards the external community by being active for decarbonization message to our members of the organization is another thing.
Are your employees watching today as well? Yes, they must be in a conference room watching. Thank you very much. Next, we've been talking about SBTs. In SBTs, a level sufficiently lower than 2 degrees. That is what NISSIN Foods Holdings is certified for. We have Mr. Kanade Hanamoto, head of the Sustainable Promotion Office of the Corporate Communications.
Thank you for the introduction. I am Hanamoto. First of all, very briefly about our business group. Next page, please. Our company is known for instant noodles, including chicken ramen, including frozen food, chilled food, drinks, as well as confectionery. In the instant noodle area, in 16 countries across the world, we have 36 factories. The typical brand is the cup noodle in the middle. This is consumed and loved in 100 countries. Earth Food Creator is our vision. To deal with environmental social challenges, we wish to create new eating and food culture. ESG, SDGs goals will have to be achieved. In particular, environment-related challenges includes corporate responsibility, and immediate action is required. The top management considers that, and the Earth Food Challenge 2030 was established last year under the top, and the whole of company effort is ongoing. Under our strategy, effective use of resources and dealing with global warming are the 2 pillars. As for the resources, ethical procurement of raw materials, including palm oil, saving water, reducing waste, are included, and in particular, to deal with climate change, reduce CO2 emission, numerical targets are included. In Scope 1 and 2, 30% reduction, Scope 3, 15% reduction, and we have been designated SBT goals. For Scope 1 and 2, many are emitted at our own factories, so renewable energy can be used as replacement. In addition, regarding Scope 3, there is no one single answer to reduce the emission. A variety of efforts will have to be combined to reduce the emission. Next slide. one example of our effort, for example, this is cup noodle, the package. This is now biomass eco cup, which is based on plant. And this is the sealant. After you pour the hot water, there used to be a sealant, and this year we have eliminated this in order to reduce the plastic consumption. As for the noodles, the materials include what we call a mysterious meat, which is alternative meat based on soy beans. So vegetable-based meat and other alternatives are developed. Cultivated meat, not based on animal, is also under research. In addition to that, the palm oil is used for our noodles. Ethical procurement is conducted. It may be little in a cup, but there are a lot of technologies and ethical thinking included in order to reduce CO2. We will continue this kind of effort in order to deliver eco-friendly products to our customers and at the same time to achieve our own environmental goals. That would be my first comment. Thank you.
Thank you for that. The last screen showed something which looked very delicious. It's the soy, isn't it? The ingredient. It's very tasty. There are people who did not find it tasty initially, but soy meat as a starter, that's a very good way of starting and to initiate into soy meat. Sustainable palm oil. On sustainable palm oil, how do you determine whether something is sustainable?
We have the recognition system, RSPO certified palm oil is what we are doing. In the United States and Europe already, all of our palm oil are RSPO certified across the world. RSPO certification is 26%. Our goal is by 2030, by using this certification and with our in-house assessment, we wish to transit to 100% ethical procurement.
That's wonderful. From what we hear, RSPO certification, palm oil emits less CO2.
Yes, there are such academic reports, so that will be a contribution to the global warming.
Thank you. And there's a company that's studying being certified as SVT, but in 2050, group-wide zero is the target they have set for themselves. From Obayashi Corporation, ESG, SVG division head, we have Mr. Yoshio Tobiyama. Thank you very much. From Obayashi Corporation, my name is Yoshio Tobiyama. Please show the handout, please. The next screen. The next page, please. We celebrate 130 years of business management, both inside and outside the country. We're doing construction businesses, real estate development, and green energy businesses, what we're doing as well. Consolidated turnover is 2 trillion yen, approximately. As is shown here, in 2011, we have formulated our Obayashi philosophy, the societal agenda. At the time, climate change was what we were aware of. To become a leading company, which is earth-friendly, to become a leading company and to contribute to the realization of a sustainable society toward the achievement of this goal. In 2019, Obayashi Sustainability Vision 2050 was revised. We have set the decarbonization as one of the targets for realization of sustainability of the planet, society, and people in 2050. And promoting ESG management on this front, we have set establishing an environmental responsible society, which includes reducing CO2 emissions in construction business and initiatives for renewable energy as one of our ESG materialities. And last year, we have endorsed TCFD and disclosed the results of scenario analysis, including response to climate change. And as has been mentioned earlier, We're working on formulating CO2 reduction targets and specific initiatives to obtain SBT certification by the end of 2021. The next page, please. At the present point in time, what kind of approaches are we taking in terms of CO2 reduction? First of all, low carbon materials, energy saving construction, fuel saving construction machinery, and use of CO2 free electricity, and the decarbonization in construction sites, and decarbonized construction penetration, low C material, and energy-saving construction, fuel-saving construction machinery, and that CO2-free electricity. And also ZEB construction, timber construction, and the long-life buildings. We are working on all of these. The next page, please. And the other pillar is providing green energy solutions. This is an area of focus for us. From 2012, we've been working on renewable energy power generation on the domestic scene in 30 locations. In total, 154 megawatts is the generating capacity that we have through all our facilities. Going forward, large size offshore wind and geothermal and small hydropower is what we intend to use and turn into business. And hydrogen manufacturing, storage, next generation technology is what we are keeping on our eye on in terms of business development. And we're doing technological development for regional implementation of hydrogen power generation and construction of a social implementation model in Kobe City. And in Oita Prefecture in New Zealand, we've done field tests of construction of hydrogen supply chains using geothermal power generation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. You're not a fresh member. It's a very whole-scale approach that you're taking. The local scene decarbonization, you've talked about that. We look at construction sites quite often. It looks quite difficult, doesn't it? You use oil-based material. If you use solar, can you use solar energy in construction sites? Is that a possibility? Solar power generation is something that we do. We have the know-how. Technologically speaking, we can do it. But in building, we have to listen to the requests of our customers, and that's very important. If there are requests from the customer, depending on the order, we can accommodate. But then there are conditions for building depending on the locality. We have to consider the request of the customer and the situation on the local scene. If conditions permit, we feel that we can do it. But at the present point in time, various factors lead to increase in cost. With hopes for the future, we want to have requests from the customers. If there is a request and demand from the society, technology will advance, and with that, demand will probably increase. And if it increases, we can expect a reduction in prices. Thank you very much. I hope that Obayashi Corporation will receive orders with a request to use solar power. Well, I can't do it. I am just recommending other people place orders to that effect. In April of this year, to reduce emissions to net zero by 2050 has been announced by ANA. And we have Ms. Masako or Kudou, Vice President, Sustainable Management Department, Director of Corporate Sustainability, ANA, who will be speaking. Thank you.
Can you show the slide, please? Today, because of time limitations, I will just skip the introduction overview of the company. As ANA Group, what we're doing in tackling environmental issues. Next page, please. Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 have been mentioned several times. As you can imagine, we are flying aircraft. So in terms of our industry, Scope 1, that's overwhelmingly the bulky part of our emissions. And this time, by fiscal year 2050, realizing carbon neutrality, that effective zero emissions is part of the target. In Scope 1, CO2 emissions from aircraft, that accounts for 99%. The remainder is 1%. So from aircraft and then non-aircraft, you can see the categories. But the major ones, by flying aircraft, the CO2 emissions, that's the bulkiest part of our emissions. Next page, please. Just looking at our industry, what we are doing. People say that in this industry, this is a sector where it's difficult to reduce emissions. So by 2050, how best we can realize carbon neutral? There are actually 4 ways to do so. First, on the top, utilizing SAF, sustainable aviation fuel. Biojet fuel might ring a bell in your mind. Other than biomass, there are many other kinds. Now, compared with the fossil fuel derived jet fuel, this is a sustainable aviation fuel. Then this is the major issue. And then also technological renovation of aircraft. For instance, energy efficient aircraft. And also in the future, driven by electricity or driven by hydrogen is another possibility. Number 3, improvement in terms of operation. So wash engine with water, and then having the ideas, creative ideas for operation. Those are low-profile efforts, but with these 3, it's still not enough. Then utilizing ETS. These are the pathways in our industry, airline industry. Next page, please. Still, in the airline industry, because of the COVID-19, the production volume has decreased, but post-COVID, this is the area that the production volume is likely to increase. And aiming at carbon neutrality is indeed an ambitious target. And I talked about SAF, sustainable aviation fuel. CO2 emissions can be reduced by using SAF, this fuel. How best we can utilize this SAF as a fuel? It's a major point, but globally, it's used only 0.01% in the industry. So for us, this is a major point, but the supply volume is little. There is shortage as ANA group. Japan, we don't have commercialized SAF, but from 2019 fiscal year, in the delivery made from brought from overseas, for instance, Lanzatech SAF was used in 2020. Finnish company called Neste, it was imported and then mounted here in Japan. In terms of domestic production, Olympics and Paralympics, NEDO had a project, domestically produced SAF as a biojet fuel. This was used from a regular flight from Haneda Airport. But in this sense, very important pathway to reach carbon neutrality. How best we can make sure that we could get the supply of SAF. That's important. Low and steady, we have started using this, but procurement. And then until we actually put them on the aircraft, we need to establish the supply chain. Little by little, we have been building a track record. And also, we are not producing them. So how best we can ask others to do so, not just waiting, but with those producers and also with the people in the government. We need to involve them in terms of quantity and quality and also at the stable prices. Those are the areas that we have been working on. Friday last week, together with JAL, joint report was issued there about the situation of SAF, our situation of the airline industry. All the stakeholders need to tackle this. That's what the report said towards carbon neutrality. We need to create an environment that allows us to do so towards that overarching objective. We would like to work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Miyata, for that. 0.01%. That is the only percentage that the SAF or SAF accounts for within the totality of the fuel. When you target carbon neutral, a considerable amount would be something you would purchase. Is that right? Yes. we want to purchase, and we hope that the supply will be there at a stable price. If that is properly supplied, not only one company, but the aviation industry as a whole, if it uses it, a sustainable transportation means is what we want to establish, and that would be very important. Thank you very much. For those of you who are watching, it's a major business opportunity. So if you could develop 0.01%, if you look at this figure, 40 years ago, when I started studies on climate change, renewable energy was about that amount. And since then, renewable energy has expanded in power generation. So I would urge that you invest in this area of SAF. And last but not least, thank you very much for waiting. In May, JPI, the Japan Post Group, aimed for net zero in 2050. We have Mr. Takayuki Haruna, Managing Executive Officer and Co-Chief Investment Officer of the Japan Post Insurance Company, decarbonization of the group as a whole. And within the insurance business, how do you intend to go about realizing decarbonization? Thank you very much. My name is Haruna from JPI. As has been introduced, institutional investors. I'm probably the only representative of financial institutions. So I'd like to talk about the group as a whole, but we'd like to talk about the ESG investment and the approaches we're also taking into consideration decarbonization trends. The first slide, please. This slide shows the ESG investment that we have been making in the past. In a time series, we show the ESG investments that we have made. Originally, our organization was a public entity, and that was privatized, and that was the backdrop. And 1 in 5 persons in Japan have policies of our insurance company. 23 million is the number. So as an insurance company, rather than an asset owner, we're a universal owner. We have such a responsibility. And with such an attitude, we're moving forward with asset management. And as a result, the decarbonization ESG approaches has become a basic philosophy in our culture. It has affinity to our corporate philosophy and culture. And various initiatives have been taken, UNPRI, TCFD. We have endorsed both of these, and JCI, joining JCI seemed a natural thing to do. It was taken for granted that we do this. And climate change brings about situations where it affects people's lives, and it has a health impact. So in terms of a life insurance company, we feel that this is a very important theme that we should take up. Next slide, please. This slide is JPI's ESG investment framework, a broad brush framework. On the left-hand side is the base priority initiative themes. There are 3 of these. One of them is a contribution to environmental protection. And naturally, dealing with climate change is a very important factor. And I'm sure you're aware of this. Of total assets, 70 trillion of this. Securities is 60 trillion. So investment in securities accounts for a large percentage, as I mentioned, was mentioned before. Category 3, or Scope 3, Category 10. That is what this is. So GHG measurement here is a very important area that we should achieve, including SBT certification for the group as a whole. We think this is a very major challenge. As an institutional investor, in terms of measurement, Scope 3 must be measured, and we have to feed this into the next approach. And that is the target that we have set for ourselves for the time being. The next slide, please. This slide shows on the left-hand side, Scope 1, and right-hand side, Scope 3, what we are engaging in under each at the moment. As I just mentioned, the securities that we own is a huge amount, and there are diverse categories to do GHG measurement on all of these. That is a very tough work. It requires a lot of time and work, and also we have to, a lot of cost is incurred. But this is something that we have to do, and so we're moving ahead with this. Universal owner, that is our position. When we think of this, on the left-hand side, I have written engagement with the investees. We have to engage with them, and if decarbonization is insufficient with regard to a sector or with regard to a company, it's not that we do. In some cases, some investors would disinvest or divest, but on our part, the approaches toward decarbonization is something that we want to support through finance, and so through engagement, the approaches from the financial standpoint, we want to encourage to the investees, and I believe that's the responsibility of the universal owner, and we feel that we have to fulfill our responsibility in that capacity. Thank you. That is all. Thank you very much. 70 trillion yen approximately is the money that you manage. When you make the decision to invest, how do you make that decision? How do you evaluate, and how do you make that decision? Of course, the pure return is there. That's one thing. But ESG or decarbonization, when it comes to these things, as mentioned before, the company, how have they steered toward decarbonization? That is what we look at through engagement. We confirm that, and that's the starting point. And of course, naturally, external assessment institutions and SBT, it would be important factors for determination. Respective companies have their respective circumstances, so we take that into consideration to respond and to make decisions. Thank you. That is companies that have had a large emissions, or sectors that have a large emission. Rather than that, you look at whether companies have steered in the direction of decarbonization. So that sounds like a message to all of you to make that change, to steer toward decarbonization. We have had fresh members of JCI introduce themselves and the company. As amount of emissions, we have had answers from CDP, and scope 1 is 13 million. ANA has the largest emission. On the other hand, in emissions through investment, scope 1, it's 700 times with regard to scope 1. JPI's scope 3, category 15, would be a huge amount. That can be expected. So companies in all sectors are steering toward decarbonization, and that, I think, became very clear. So I'd like to ask questions. Decarbonization, steering toward the decarbonization. When it comes to decarbonization, what about cost? Can that be done? That is a discussion that we often hear. Actually, having steered in the direction of decarbonization, what are your impressions? What are your experiences as a result of steering toward decarbonization? Kudou-san, please.
At Shionogi, we are ready with the SBT target reduction that has already been conducted. So we steered into this direction in setting the SBT targets. In the process, the current status targets are looked at, and the gap has become clarified, and also what the measures we can have. We studied them, and then we were able to get into the implementation phase, which was good. And regarding SBT, we after the certification, we made the declaration. So we were aligned in terms of the vector in-house. On the other hand, regarding our company, including domains, expansion of the business is one of the things we intend to do. So in that perspective, towards decarbonization management strategy, there's quite a lot of uncertainty, making it difficult to make a forecast. So there are some difficulties and challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Hanamoto-san, please.
At our company, there was the powerful initiative by the top executive that it is a corporate responsibility to deal with this area. So the company itself started immediately because of the very strong initiative of the top leaders by tackling these challenges. Because we produce daily goods like food to our customers, the assessment by our customers is expected to rise. Therefore, as we engage in marketing, day by day, we recognize that the awareness of the consumer is rising. So we also have to change our mindset. Thank you.
Thank you. Tobiyama-san, please. At our company, as I explained earlier, with regard to environment, the approaches that we have been taken quite early. SVT certification toward this, we are working a more specific numerical target in having that to proceed with the construction business to steadily reduce numbers is not easy. That is what we keenly feel. And so this flow and this trend should not be stopped. We should be very positive about being realistic in materializing these numbers. And this is something that we'd like to work on going forward. There are companies which are leading, and they have set their targets. As a construction industry, the bar is quite high, and that is what I'm feeling. Thank you. Miyata-san, please.
By fiscal year 2050, achieving carbon neutrality in the society, as a company that can be recognized by the society, I think it's necessary for us to first show this kind of approach, but it's ambitious. So what will be the pathway to achieve this? There is a high hurdle. Regarding cost, there's a short-term view, and as you mentioned, including renewable energy. In the long-term view, what will be the movement in the society? How will the society move? Initially, you may have a cost perspective, but when there are changes in the society, being able to respond, being prepared. So preparation is what we're talking about. Regarding the SAF fuel, it's very expensive at the moment. Along those activities, if you look at the single year cost and response to society, you have to strike a balance as a corporate responsibility. But in the long-term view, doing business and with environmental regulations are likely to change, being able to respond to them. So you need to have the long-term perspective as well, and setting the targets along that line.
Thank you. Haruna-san, please. Yes. From the eyes of an institutional investor, scope 3 would be the target of measurement. As I mentioned before, if you look at this alone, it's a tough task. But as I mentioned before, if you look at this as an investor, a decarbonization, the trend itself is an opportunity in terms of investment. It gives rise to opportunities. And so I've been listening to the other speakers, and these are companies that are positive about taking approaches, and their growth potential would be something that we'll be evaluating potentially as a target. So it's not a bad thing. I believe it's an environment where we will see opportunities. Thank you. I've listened to all of you, and it seems that it's not something one company alone can do. You have the customers and suppliers and investees, and then you have a long-term perspective, which is very important. And I think that has emerged out of this. So rather than the cost, perhaps the opportunities are greater in comparison to cost. Who agrees with me? The opportunities are greater than the cost. I'm sorry I put you on the spot. Going forward in the long run. Thank you. Everyone has raised their hand. Maybe I've made it obligatory I forced them to raise their hand. We're quickly running out of time. So last but not least, if everyone can give us messages from our viewers to the participants, or there's a multi-stakeholder session which follows this. The next generation youths will be participating. People in different capacities will be participating. And that's the good thing about JCI. It's not just companies, but various people and people in various positions can participate. So could we have a message to all of these people through all of you, please?
Right. Government of Japan made a carbon neutrality declaration, and the industry's attitude on climate changes have changed significantly. Consumers, markets are likely to change more and more. That's how I feel. In various sectors, and people from different perspectives, they all work together for decarbonization. And I hope that's what's going to happen, and that's my expectation. And also, regarding those measures for decarbonization, companies who are really active, or the products that are active in addressing that, they can be supported, they can be evaluated. If the society changes to that direction, that'd be great. And also, we would like to make our own bit to make a contribution in our activities.
Thank you. Hanamoto-san, please.
Our product is what you eat every day. It is basic food. So it is a tiny little product like this, but this does include a lot of devices. There are lots of our feeling and emotions in our tiny product. If you choose our product, we want to be a positive contribution to the society, and that is the request of the consumer, so we want to respond to that in our daily marketing activities. The consumption behavior of all of you is the strongest message for us, and therefore we ask for your very kind consideration in the selection of your product. Thank you.
Yano-san, please. Tobiyama-san, please. On decarbonization approaches going forward, the next generation, to provide them with a more affluent earth, to protect the earth so that it'll be more affluent in the future. For all persons, they'll be asked to act and implement with this in mind, and we are aware of this as an important challenge. The importance of this has to be educated broadly in society, and we have to answer to the request from society. So along with the supply chain, we'd like to proceed with approaches for decarbonization. And we want to penetrate and disseminate this thinking throughout the society. Thank you.
2050 carbon neutrality. That's a challenging target. And to achieve this, it also holds true for SDGs. Number 17, collaboration. What we have been doing so far, the ways of doing things, we need to think out of the box, what kind of a novel collaboration we can actually have that can really serve greatly for all of you, all of us who are here, representing different positions. But by working together, I hope that we can make a breakthrough in this big challenge. Thank you.
Haruna-san, please. As I mentioned at the outset, there's a huge number of policy holders, and we're supported by them. And with the premiums, valuable premiums, we invest this money and our funds so that this is beneficial to the society. We have to invest appropriately. And the government and businesses or universities and academia, we want to deepen our ties so that for a sustainable society, we want to build a track record. That is the approach we want to take. Thank you very much. Session 2. In this session, it came out very clearly that one person or one entity alone cannot do the task. the customers' voices, the customers' behavior toward consumption would be the source of action by companies. In the next multi-stakeholder session, we'll have people in diverse walks of life and diverse capacities will be participating. So lastly, JCI Race to Circle. We hope that you will all join. I'd like to urge you to join. Thank you very much to all.